While we're waiting to get started, I'll mention that we've had a couple of these OLC Live sessions in the past few weeks. So we started off about a month ago with Jean Twinga, who's going to be one of the keynote speakers at this year's Accelerate conference. And Jean was talking to us about the I generation. She's a demographer, a sociologist who studies the differences between different generations. And so her latest book was on this current generation that's currently going through school, people who were born between 1995 and 2014. And so it's basically everybody who's in K through 12 and a lot of our college students who are under 22, 23 years old. And so she was comparing that generation to the baby boomers and to the Gen Xers, how this current generation has sort of a extended childhood, that they don't start drinking as early as prior generations do. They don't have sex as early as prior generations do on average. They don't work as much while they're in high school, and they're not as engaged in extracurricular activities as much at school. And what they're doing instead of many of these things is spending time on their phones. And so she was really looking at how the technology of smartphones has sort of reshaped childhood and reshaped adolescence for this current generation, and what are the implications for that for higher education. So I'm really looking forward to her keynote, and we had a really good conversation that you can find online at the OLC website. So that was in week one. Our second conversation, which was 2 weeks after that, about 2 weeks ago, was with several people from Davidson College who are working on sort of some open courses targeting the Davidson community. So both Davidson, North Carolina as a broader community, and then current students and former students from Davidson College, to try to bring all of those people together around. The current course is actually on the idea of community there at Davidson, and also a sort of a sister community in France. And so this current course is, what is community? What does it mean to be a part of community? What does it mean to build these communities that are, that break down the walls of the university in terms of reaching out into a larger structure? And what Davidson's doing that's really interesting is that they're involving alumni and current students in the design of this course to try to get student perspective on how to build a community. Again, if we're trying to build things for students, we should try to incorporate them into the building of those classes, those experiences. So that was 2 weeks ago. And then last week we talked to Clark Shaw Nelson, who's one of the chairs, co-chair of the upcoming OLC Innovate in Denver in April. And Clark and I talked about his history with OLC. He's been going to Accelerate for as long as we've had an Accelerate conference, and even longer, and the same with Innovate. And we were talking a little bit about the differences between Accelerate and Innovate. We were talking about the startup of the TTK, the test kitchen at Accelerate, and the innovation lab at Innovate. We talked about all of the opportunities for engagement and participating in these two conferences beyond just giving papers, but actually volunteering and getting active within the organizing communities for the two conferences. So all three of them are OLC Live interviews, are up now on the OLC website, and you can find those. And then we'll be posting this interview in the coming week once we get it all rendered and cut up. But right now we're just trying to finalize some audio issues for Kathleen, I think, and we should get started here in just a couple of minutes. Hi, Kathleen, can you hear me?
I can.
Great. So apparently we've got audio or video, but not both. But maybe we can.
Right. I think we'll go with the audio for now.
Yeah, probably better for this format. But thank you for joining us today. I've got Kathleen Ives, who's the Chief Executive Officer of OLC, an Executive Director of OLC, and we'll be talking about leadership today. I think Chris is recording us, and so maybe we can go ahead and get started. I was looking forward to talking with you today about both your research on leadership and then how you're incorporating that research into OLC Accelerate and into Innovate and into the tracks and the programming for those two conferences. So could you start off by telling us a little bit about your research and your background?
Sure. Actually, my doctorate is in organizational leadership, so this is a topic that I'm pretty passionate about. And most recently, Larry Reagan from Penn State, who some of you may know, and I did some research on emerging leadership in online learning, and in particular leadership development. And so what we found, and this isn't surprising stuff, is that the first generation of leaders, so those were the leaders that the Sloan Foundation, our original founder, funded to participate in these new, air quotes, distance learning programs basically came from different areas of the institution. And their biggest challenges were dealing with how to introduce online education, right, into the institution. You fast forward to today's leaders, and their challenge is a bit more complex, whereas the prior leaders were really focusing on beginning to introduce this. Today's new leaders, and I call them the second generation and third generation leaders, are actually looking at how they can institutionalize digital and online learning into the mix. And their challenges are so much more complex because now they're looking at data security, they're looking at technology-enabled devices, they're looking at advances in cognitive science, data-driven decision-making, none of which was available for those early pioneers. And moreover, those first-generation leaders are entering retirement age. So there's more pressure than ever on the second generation and third generation leaders to stay current in their field, to be networking with like-minded individuals that can help them broaden their expertise. And the thing that's also challenging for institutions is there really hasn't been any effective succession planning. And so now more and more, it's really important for us that are involved in the digital space, particularly those of us that are the first generation leaders, to look at how we can move the field forward for the second and the third generation leaders. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, and I guess one concern I would have there is that if the sort of central hubs of these early networks in online learning and in digital leadership are starting to leave the field, are starting to retire, that is there a concern that these networks will fluctuate, will be challenged for continuity? Is there a concern that we might end up taking a step back as these people leave the field just because of the lack of their leadership? And how do we overcome that challenge?
You know what? That's a great question, and I don't think we will. I think actually the opposite is happening. I think more and more, again, the leaders that are coming up through the ranks now recognize the importance of networking with like-minded colleagues. In the early days, it became very competitive, and it was almost like you saw a lot of colleges and universities creating their own programs and not sharing with each other, being very like it was invented here, so it's the best. You don't see that anymore. You see a lot of collaboration taking place across institutions. And I think that's what's so exciting about our field right now is the willingness to share and to bring others on really as a way to lift the field up, not just an individual or not just an institution.
Yeah, and that's been one of my favorite parts of these conferences is that, that space for collaboration, that space for cross-institutional work, both sharing best practices, but also just the development of the networks to be able to know, the Angela Gunders and Jess Knotts and people spread out all over the country that I've gotten to meet.
And to your point, that's what people say about the conferences is one of the most valuable things is that network, is the opportunity to be in a physical location with people that are sharing some of your same challenges and hopefully some of your successes as well.
Yeah. And I know that you've worked to incorporate sort of this idea into OLCs, both the conferences and also sort of everything that happens in between the conferences. And so can you talk a little bit about the leadership pathways that y'all are developing and how those help to both discover new leaders and then, sort of shape them for the challenges ahead?
Yeah, one of the books that I've found really interesting that's actually shaped my thinking in recent years is called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. And it's something that we've woven into how we create pathways for our members and our non-members to navigate through our products and services depending where they are in that leadership continuum. And the belief that we share is that leaders show up in various roles. So it's no longer position power. Remember back in the day, well, at least I'll say in my day, when your parents told you to do something, you did it. And that's pretty much how leadership was. Well, position power today is blown out the window. I mean, that just isn't how we get things done. And so when we look at leadership, as I mentioned, it does happen at all levels of the institution. Just because you don't have the title vice provost doesn't mean that you are not leading in some way, shape, or form. And so what we did is in creating the pathways, we looked at where an individual may show up on the leadership continuum. And we have 3 areas of focus. The first is what we call foundation, which is leadership discovery. And this is where as you're becoming an effective leader, you're becoming more self-aware, and who you are as an individual, and how you can begin to have positive impact on those in the field. And then the second tenet is called growth, and that's intentional leadership development. So now you've moved past the self-awareness stage, and you're looking at ways that you can consciously move yourself forward. You've already identified areas that you need to develop. And finally, the third area is what we call momentum. And that's where you really play off your community connections and where you network and you learn from those connections. And that's how we've kind of structured the opportunity to participate and accelerate this year. Is we've looked at each areas of focus, and what I'd like to offer up to you and to the audience is suggested pathways you might take as a leader, depending where you are in your journey.
Yeah, and can you tell us a little bit about that foundational pathway, the early work in that?
Yeah, so the foundational pathway, when you're looking, again, this is really pertaining to accelerate. We're recommending a couple of areas. First of all, and this probably sounds obvious, is the leadership track. And that is an entire track that's focused on leadership, and it looks at how leaders grow, how they build, how they scale their institutions, the different strategies and leadership approaches. The strategies could be in the form of innovation, globalization, new culture within the institution. So there's over 90 sessions that are focused specifically on the leadership track. And that's, again, getting back to the foundation, building your foundation. That's a good way to kind of set your foundation if you're new to the field or if you're new to your leadership role. The second area that we recommend, again, this foundation area, are the town halls. And the town halls are a blast as well as being informative. And I know you know this. This is where you get to meet track chairs, and they oversee each of the programming and each of the different tracks, and you participate in highly engaged and interactive dialogues that build on the focus of each area. So that's pretty exciting. Can you not hear me?
Sorry, I couldn't tell if my audio cut out or yours did there for a second.
Okay, good. I was worrying that I was talking to myself. But yeah, so I was talking about the town halls and how engaged they are, and they actually look at topics that weren't necessarily selected for the program, but it actually gives you as a participant the opportunity to engage with these track chairs and also to look at different areas in the tracks that span the conference: research, teaching tools and techniques, learner-supported services, professional development. All of those are part of this town hall, which is really engaging and fun. And as I said, it's really something not to be missed. The third thing I wanted to mention, although it's not available to all, is what we call the Institute in Emerging Online Learning Masterclass, or Institute for Emerging Leadership in Online Learning. And that's for all the different programs who have run through what we call IELOL, classes from 2009 to 2018. And just as a selfless or a shameless self-promotion, for those of you that have not participated in IELOL, it's a fabulous blended experience. It's about 6 months long, and applications for 2019 will be open on November 1st. But again, every year you have the opportunity at this masterclass to network and engage not only with your cohort, but the cohorts from all the previous years. And so this is kind of a suggestion for those interested in foundational growth opportunities. That's
great. Yeah, and then what about at the next phase, at that intentional leadership development phase, the growing into your leadership role?
Right. So the intentional leadership phase, again, this is where you're moving beyond your own self-awareness, and you're really very cognizant of areas you need to look at to improve. One of the things that we recommend is the Leadership Network. And this is a special half-day event that's in collaboration with senior digital learning leaders. And here, they address the big challenges, right? So it's patterned after, if any of you have attended our regional OLC Collaborate events, where it's extremely engaging. You have several speakers, you have the opportunity to go into breakout sessions and discuss not only with your colleagues, but with those speakers, these issues. So it's very, very, again, interactive. You get to network with people that are experts in the field. And this event, for those of you that are kind of planning out your calendars, takes place on Tuesday. The next area is been a particular area of interest for me, and that is women in digital learning leadership. And there is a luncheon that takes place on Thursday. And we've been doing these for about 7 years because there was an expressed interest, not just by women, but by men, as to how can we not only recognize women leaders in the field, but how can we develop those emerging leaders? And so there's a small cost for this event, but the money all goes towards a scholarship for a deserving woman to come to the conference. And again, at Accelerate, all men and women are invited to attend this event. And then finally, another suggestion for this path is the OLC Awards and Leadership Ceremony and Reception. So this is a bit different than previous years. We used to have an awards luncheon. Now we're going to be doing it as a reception. And this is where you get to see who's being recognized in the field and for what. So this is where we'll present our Digital Learning Innovation Awards. Many of you may remember that we received a grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation a few years ago. And this is where we offer 3 $100,000 prizes and 10 $10,000 prizes to individuals that have been making significant inroads in the digital learning space. We also recognize individuals who have come forth with their own effective practices in teaching, learning, and technology, and they're recognized there. And also we induct new members into the OLC Fellows category. So this will be a really, I think, a fun event and a little bit more interactive than the lunches that we've done in the past. So we encourage you to participate in that as well.
And it looks like that's going to be on Tuesday the 13th, so right at the beginning of the conference at 5 p.m.
Yes, it is.
For that
it is.
And then what about this third track? So once you've laid that foundation, you've gotten into sort of recognizing yourself as a leader at whatever role, and then you've started to develop your skills through these various activities. What about that final community connections part of this area?
So this is where you have the opportunity to do a deep dive. And one area that we recommend is participating in the Global Quality Summit. We've done this for several years now, and here you'll have the opportunity to network and discuss and share best practices in online and digital learning with representatives from all over the globe. And again, it's another interactive session. You'll be able to look at quality in this, emerging landscape and get ideas and best practices, not just regionally, not just nationally, but what individuals are doing in other countries. And this particular event takes place at Accelerate on Wednesday, and it starts at 8:30, and it's actually included in individuals' conference registration. Another event which is new, and we're kind of excited about this, is what is being called as Walk and Talks. Okay, Walk and Talks. And this is a healthy way to exchange big ideas while being on the move. Get out and be in hopefully the Orlando sunshine, and you'll be working with the OLC Field Guides, who are volunteers, as you go out for a daily escape and themed discussion. They'll depart daily at 9 a.m. on Wednesday and Thursday and 9:45 on Friday. From what we're calling the Field Guide base station in the Dolphin Foyer. But again, you can look on the website, or when you get there, all of this will be very, very clearly labeled either in your program or by signage. And so the daily themes are kind of interesting. So on Wednesday, we're going to be looking at, AR, VR, MR, and online learning and data. Thursday, we're going to be looking at the politics of online learning and the ambiguity of digital literacy. And then Friday, we'll be looking at badging, micro-credentials, and the future of the degree, as well as vendor wars in online education. So that was kind of a fun opportunity to not only talk and network, but actually to get out in the fresh air and move around. Finally, we think this is one of the best features of the conference, and this is called speed networking. And so you have the opportunity to talk to colleagues again throughout the country about innovations and different work that they're doing in a speed networking, what's really an informal conversational space. And it allows you to kind of come in, pop in to the space anytime during the conference. It's kind of like a hummingbird lounge, if you will. You zip in, you zip out, but you go in and you engage really quickly, and then you move on. And this is actually located in the exhibit hall, and so it's pretty easy to access when you're there. And speaking of the exhibit hall, we also encourage, and this is on the first day as well, to go to the exhibit hall preview. I mean, we often think about, the sessions and things that we learn at the sessions and from networking, but you can learn quite a bit from the vendors in the exhibit hall. They are a fountain of information. They're all doing research in the field too. And even if you're not purchasing their products per se, you certainly can learn a lot about what they're doing in their particular space, whether it's proctoring, new technology, or whatever. The other thing I recommend that is also in the exhibit hall is the technology test kitchen. That's, again, a fun, non-threatening way to learn about new technologies with our test kitchen chefs. And you can also, again, move in and out from the test kitchen to networking with exhibitors. So it's really a nice space for you to engage and learn.
Yeah, and I'm particularly excited about, there's going to be, I think, a chance for some escape room activity there in the exhibit hall and TTK as well. Maddie Shelgren heading up a new idea in team building. And so I'm particularly looking forward to that. I'm very excited about these walk and talks also.
About that.
Yeah. Maddie's brilliant. I think she's going to have some really good narratives for those escape rooms. And then, I think with any conference, you're liable to be sitting around for a while. So these walk and talks would be great in terms of just getting up and moving around a little bit in the mornings. Talking about AR, VR on Wednesday, politics of online learning on Thursday, and then badges, micro-credentials, and vendor wars on Friday. So very much looking forward to all of that. And then I imagine there will be sort of similar things going on actually in Disney World. I know I'll be in at various times and meeting up with people to both ride rides and continue the conversations from earlier in the day. What do you? I guess having been here, what are you most looking forward to this time around? What iteration, what new innovation for this conference has you excited for 2018?
I'm always excited about meeting the speakers. I know you've done a couple of these OLC lives with some of our speakers, and they're always very inspiring. For me, at least, I'm pretty excited about that. I actually, I just talked about our vendors. I love going into the exhibit halls, and probably that's where you'll find me a lot of the time, either at the technology test kitchen or talking to the vendors. I really feel that you can get the pulse of the field by the hands-on at the test kitchen, as well as some practicality of listening to what our vendors do. And I heard you mention it too. Again, I'm going to try one of those walk and talks. I think that's going to be really interesting, and it also will make you or give you won't feel like you're missing out, right? Because they're a little bit structured, but you're also outside and you're not, planted in a chair for the whole day. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, and I'm already trying to figure out how we're going to take OLC Live on a walk and talk, and then also into the theme park. And so we'll see how we can integrate ourselves into those. And I know that we'll be in Test Kitchen. My first experience of any of the OLCs was at an Innovate, but it was in the Innovation Lab. And the Test Kitchen, I think, is the best place to go and just meet people and start that networking experience in terms of it's just a place that you can be throughout the entire conference. You can come back there to mull over the presentations that you've just seen and to discuss them with other people as they're thinking about what to do next. And just as a hub and as a meeting point, the Test Kitchen and the vendor spaces are really fantastic at all the OLC conferences.
Yeah, you know what I like about
what's
the
next?
test kitchen is that you walk away with what they call, your recipe. So not only are you
Yeah,
there and you can learn, but you can walk away with some takeaways, which is nice as well.
yeah. What's next for you in terms of your ongoing research and leadership? What are you currently working on, or what are you excited to start researching, gathering data for? Or are you in the
Mhm.
analysis mode on anything?
No, you know what's interesting, and many of you may know Liz Chaboki. She's at St. John's University. She actually is beginning some research on, I mentioned earlier in the conversation, the Institute for Emerging Leadership and Online Learning. She is kind of doing a study where OLC is supporting her on where are they now. So looking at the first class of 2009 all the way up through to see what their leadership journey has been and how they've applied it. She's in the early stages of her research, but we're looking forward to sharing that with the community, hopefully sometime next year.
That'll be really interesting. Yeah, one of the things that you mentioned very early on here, and that reminds me of, is that it does feel like the education and technology space is still, it's not new, but a lot of people come into it from different backgrounds. Not everybody comes into it from
Mm-hmm.
having a master's or a PhD in educational technology. And so for a lot of people, they're creating their own path into this field, discovering the field, independently, and then coming into OLC to sort of learn more, and to start up leadership positions. So I've been really interested in what you said about discovering new people, and then also people discovering sort of a new energy for these topics, through OLC and through the work they're doing at their own universities. And so I think, yeah, leadership is a really exciting perspective that you
Mm-hmm.
get at OLC that maybe you don't. It's hard to find that in a shop of one or in a small shop somewhere else as you're
Right.
doing ID and educational technology.
Well, and the other thing
How is
too,
your
and just to kind of build on what you just said, is the whole notion of groupthink too. You
yeah
tend to, when you're in an institution, and not a bad thing, right? I mean, is to start thinking like each other, and it's kind of nice to break out of that and and talk to other people in the field. And like I said early on, I came from corporate, and what I have found about academia is just the openness and the sharing. And again, I think because most of us have a passion for what we do, we do want to lift the field and we do want to move it forward. And I think that's why it's just such an exciting time right now.
Yeah, yeah, and that's always my favorite part of these conferences is just the energy off of them, and that wanting to share both the things that we're excited about at our own schools and what we're seeing elsewhere. I always come in, wanting to meet a few people and just ask them how they're doing, what they're doing, um, those types of issues. Um, what uh, how has your participation in these conferences affected your own sort of personal learning network? How have you been able to leverage your very central role in OLC in order to develop your own network to be able to draw upon? And how has that affected both your research and your sort of day-to-day practice?
Well, it's amazing because of the community that you create, that you start to find your go-to people. For example, I leverage I actually leverage my network and give it back to the community, if you will. So very often we have people coming to us asking about a certain issue, or how do they deal with that? And more likely than not, I've met someone at a conference that is doing work in that space, and so I can give back in that way. And I think everybody at OLC feels the same way. It's about facilitating those connections, for collaborative sharing and problem solving. So I think it's also personally very satisfying that you're able to do that. So I think, that's been one of the biggest things for me. And again, we're engaging with so many different subject matter experts. And even if you don't get a chance to engage very meaningfully at the conference, you certainly have met them, you've got their information, and you can, engage meaningfully, say that 10 times, with them afterwards.
Yeah, I've been impressed with OLC and impressed with this conference in the ability to also draw out introverts, for lack of a better way of putting it. Is that a lot of the people that I've met through OLC are introverted, and yet you wouldn't know that in meeting them at OLC. And I think it's because there's a level of comfort and there's also a level of encouragement for just sharing those things that you're working on and excited about, that gets people to open up, even if it's the first time at a conference, or if it's the first time around this group of people, is that OLC has been really successsul in welcoming new people into the fold. Chris says that we've got a
feedback.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been really happy with my experiences. But Chris says we've got a question. Let me see if I can get him to share that with us. So it says, I'd love to hear Kathleen's perspective on how to balance very focused work on leadership development versus trying to dabble in all of just everything that's going on.
That's a great question. It's that work, not work life, but work balance, right?
Yeah.
I think you need to dabble a bit. I mean, we call it zoom in, zoom out. I mean, you need to zoom in a bit to be successful at your job, right? But you also need to take a step back and give yourself the opportunity to grow and develop. Hence the gift of going to a conference or even participating in a webinar such as this. I think it's being cognizant of that, and it's not easy, but it's just recognizing when, we kind of talked about the 3 phases. It's where you are in those 3 phases and what do you need to do to perhaps move to the next phase. So I think it's conscious leadership is what it is. And that goes back to the book that, again, if you're interested, that also gives you, they call it the 15 commitments, but it gives you some really interesting philosophies on how to do that very purposely. So I recommend it. It's by a guy by the name of Jim Detheimer or Dethmer. I think I've not said his name right, but it's spelled Dethmer, Diana Chapman, and Kaylee Warner Klump. And you can get it on Amazon. Again, it certainly has helped me take a step back for sure.
Okay. As a sort of follow-up to that, if someone's attending OLC for the first time, what are 3 things they absolutely must do while they're at the conference?
Well, I'll be interested in your perspective as well, but one thing I would say is take advantage of the Field Guide program. So if you're just attending the conference, we've started something called the Field Guide program. Again, it's staffed by volunteers, and they can help you navigate the conference. I've heard this can be a positive and a negative, is that there's so much to do at the conference that often it can become overwhelming. So I definitely would take advantage of that. That would be one area. The other area, I can't say enough about the exhibit hall and the technology test kitchen. Again, if for someone who may just be getting exposed to technology or is not used to technology, that is a really great place to go and get more comfortable with that. So I would say that's a must. And I'm going to let you suggest, John, what do you think a third thing would be?
Yeah, I think a third that pairs nicely with both of those is getting involved on the Slack channel. I know not everybody uses Slack on a daily basis, but if you do, the Slack channel is fantastic because you can get involved with the Field Guide program. You can get involved and see what's going on in the TTK, and then also, especially if you're a first-time participant at OLC, it's a great place to just see who's going out to dinner each night and where people are, where they're going. Find a group to hang out with and to ask questions and to pick their brains. And then also, pretty much everybody is super approachable at OLC. So if you want to go up to to one of the featured speakers, if you want to go up to Kathleen, if you want to just come up to someone, you can message them on Slack and get a hold of them, or you can just sort of usually walk up to whoever you want to and start up a conversation about their work.
Can I say one thing not to do is don't stay in your hotel room. And I get back to your point about being an introvert. I am an introvert, although I know when I need to flex my style. And I know I've been at conferences where the temptation is, it's so overwhelming, I think I'll just go back to a safe place. But as John said, and even though I'm part of this organization, I think you'll find people both in the organization and attending the conference very, very approachable. So definitely, as John said, take advantage, go out to dinner with some of the groups, do the walk and talks. I think you'll find it just so valuable to have some of this one-on-one time.
Yeah. I always measure the success, my own personal success at a conference. Did I meet new people? Did I go up and talk to people that I've never talked to before? Did I go out to dinner with someone that I hadn't known coming into the conference? And just did I take advantage of those opportunities to network and to learn from from new people. As you said, I think we get into a bit of groupthink when we sort of stagnate in our personal learning networks. And my personal learning network, I'm really sort of proud of and I love, and I get great ideas from them. But the point of a big conference like this is to have 1,000 new people that I haven't met before, all with great ideas bouncing around. So I can't wait to be in Orlando. And then also, this conference in particular, I'm looking forward to having my family with me and introducing them to some of my friends and wandering around Disney World with them. So,
and that's another thing. I mean, it is also a very family-friendly conference too. You can't not be happy at the happiest place on earth, right? So we encourage our staff members to bring their family, and it's a nice balance. That's where you can have your work-life balance, right? Is by having your family there.
And for me, that means getting my 6-year-old to be exhausted early enough in the evening that I can then also go out and do some networking. So, that's my goal for each night. But yeah, I think we're about out of time. We'll be posting this interview on the OLC website and continuing the conversation in Slack and all of our other forums. But make sure to say hi to Kathleen on Slack and to come up and say hi to her at the conference. And we look forward to seeing all of you in Orlando. Any parting thoughts for us, Kathleen?
No, I just, again, I think you and I both have touched on it. It is such an exciting time for those of us in the field. We think about the new post-secondary leader, and we definitely need to possess that entrepreneurial spirit, and craft a great mental model of learning in a learner-centric academic environment, and moreover, the ability to lead transformation. And we all have the opportunity to make a difference. So we suggested some pathways for you here today. I suggest that you also think about your own pathways and create your own for the conference as well. So I look forward to meeting you all there.
Thank you. Thanks for everybody for joining us. And we'll be back next week where I think we'll be talking about, what are we talking about next week? Engagement and, I don't know, Taylor's giving me a look like I should know this. But anyway, we will be back next week, same time, and we'll be circulating everything before then in the newsletter. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, John. Bye.